The church bells tolled like a death knell, each chime tightening the knot in Zachary's chest. He stood at the altar, a perfect picture of a groom, tailored suit, polished shoes, and a smile that didn't reach his green eyes. But inside, he was unraveling, suffocated by the weight of a future he didn't choose. Zachary Coleman, 25, was the golden son of a prominent New York family, heirs to a real estate empire that stretched from Manhattan to the Hamptons. His life had been mapped out since birth: private schools, Ivy League degree, and now, marriage to Claire Davenport, the poised daughter of a family friend whose union would cement a lucrative business merger. The engagement was a contract, not a choice, orchestrated by his parents, who saw love as a luxury and duty as law. Zachary had never dared to speak the truth that burned in his heart. He was gay, and the lie he lived was tearing him apart. The rehearsal dinner the night before had been a blur of champagne toasts and forced laughter. Claire, radiant in a cream silk dress, clung to his arm, oblivious to the storm inside him. She was kind, intelligent, and beautiful, but Zachary felt nothing beyond a hollow respect. Across the room, however, someone had caught his eye: her brother, Ethan Davenport. Ethan, 26, was everything Zachary wasn't allowed to want: confident, witty, with warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through him. Their brief conversation by the bar about music, of all things, had left Zachary's heart racing, a dangerous spark igniting in the shadows of his carefully controlled life. Now, standing in the church, Zachary's gaze drifted to the pews where Ethan sat, his leather jacket swapped for a sharp blazer, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and Zachary's breath caught. He looked away, guilt clawing at him. He was about to vow his life to Claire, yet all he could think about was her brother. The officiant's voice droned on, and Zachary's mind spiraled. He'd spent years hiding who he was, burying his desires under his family's expectations. His father, Richard Coleman, a man of steel and ambition, had made it clear deviation from the plan was betrayal. His mother, Eleanor, was softer but no less insistent, her love conditional on his compliance. Coming out wasn't an option, not when it risked disinheritance, disgrace, and the loss of everything he'd been raised to value. As the rehearsal ended, Claire pulled him aside, her blue eyes searching his. "You okay? Zach, you seem distant." Her concern was genuine, and it stabbed at him. He forced a smile, muttering something about nerves, but his thoughts were on Ethan, who lingered near the exit, watching them with an intensity that made Zachary's skin prickle. That night, unable to sleep, Zachary slipped out of his Upper East Side apartment and wandered the city streets. The neon lights of Times Square buzzed above him, a chaotic symphony that matched his thoughts. He didn't know why he ended up at a small jazz club in the village, but when he saw Ethan at the bar, nursing a whiskey, it felt like fate. "You look like you're running from something," Ethan said, his voice low, teasing, but with an edge of curiosity. Zachary hesitated, then slid onto the stool beside him. "Maybe I am," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. They talked for hours about music, dreams, the pressure of family legacies. Ethan was an artist, a painter who'd rejected his own family's expectations to chase his passion. His defiance fascinated Zachary, who'd never dared to rebel. When Ethan's hand brushed his, accidental but electric, Zachary didn't pull away. For the first time in years, he felt alive. As the club emptied, Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't have to do this. You know. Marry her." Live a lie. Zachary's heart pounded, but fear gripped him harder. "You don't understand," he said, standing abruptly. "I don't have a choice." He left Ethan there, the weight of his words lingering like a bruise. But as he walked back to his apartment, the city humming around him, Zachary knew something had shifted. The spark Ethan had ignited wasn't going out. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of fittings, parties, and suffocating expectations. Zachary played his part, smiling for photos, shaking hands with investors, nodding at his father's lectures about legacy. But every moment he wasn't with Claire, his thoughts drifted to Ethan. Their chance meeting at the jazz club had cracked something open inside him, and he couldn't close it again. Ethan was everywhere, helping with wedding preparations, offering sly smiles that made Zachary's pulse race. At a garden party hosted by the Davenports, Ethan found him alone by the koi pond, away from the crowd. "You're miserable," Ethan said bluntly, his brown eyes locked on Zachary's. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" Zachary wanted to snap back, to defend the life he'd been groomed for, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he stared at the water, his reflection distorted. "It's not about me," he said finally. "It's about my family. Their expectations. Their empire." Ethan stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. "And what about what you want? Zach, when do you get to live for you?" The question hit like a punch. No one had ever asked Zachary what he wanted, not his parents, not Claire, not even himself. Before he could respond, Claire's laughter rang out from the patio, and Ethan backed away, his expression unreadable. That night, Zachary dreamed of Ethan, his touch, his voice, the freedom he represented. He woke in a cold sweat, guilt and desire warring inside him. He couldn't keep doing this, pretending to be someone he wasn't. But the wedding was in 3 days, and the weight of his family's expectations felt like chains. The next morning, he found himself at Ethan's studio in Brooklyn, a loft filled with vibrant canvases and the smell of paint. Ethan was there, shirtless, splattered with color, working on a massive abstract piece. The sight stole Zachary's breath. "I shouldn't be here," he said, but he didn't move. "Then why are you?" Ethan asked, setting down his brush. His gaze was steady, challenging. Zachary's resolve crumbled. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his voice raw. The air between them crackled. Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides, and before Zachary could think, their lips met. The kiss was desperate, hungry, a release of everything Zachary had suppressed for years. When they pulled apart, gasping, Ethan's eyes were fierce. "You deserve to be happy, Zach." Not trap, but happiness felt like a betrayal. Zachary left the studio, his mind a storm of fear and longing. He was supposed to marry Claire, to secure his family's future. Falling for her brother wasn't part of the plan. It was a disaster. The rehearsal dinner was a glittering affair, held in a rooftop ballroom overlooking Manhattan. Zachary stood beside Claire, her hand in his, as guests toasted their future. But his eyes kept finding Ethan, who leaned against a pillar, watching with a mix of longing and frustration. After the speeches, Zachary escaped to the balcony, needing air. Ethan followed. "You're going to go through with it, aren't you?" he asked, his voice tight. Zachary gripped the railing, the city sprawling below. "I don't know how to stop it," he said. "If I walk away, I lose everything, my family, my future. And if you don't, you lose yourself." Ethan shot back. "Is that worth it?" The question haunted Zachary as the wedding day loomed. He tried to focus on Claire, to find something in her that could anchor him, but all he felt was emptiness. The night before the ceremony, he sat in his apartment, staring at a photo of him and Claire from their engagement party. She was smiling, radiant. He looked like a ghost. His phone buzzed. "Ethan. Meet me at the park," the text read. Against his better judgment, Zachary went. They met under a canopy of autumn leaves, the city's hum a distant backdrop. Ethan didn't speak at first, just took Zachary's hand, his touch grounding. "I'm not asking you to choose me," Ethan said finally. "I'm asking you to choose yourself." Zachary's throat tightened. For the first time, he let himself imagine a life where he was free to love, to be himself. But the cost was staggering. His father's wrath, his mother's disappointment, the collapse of a carefully built empire. Could he really walk away? As they stood there, hand in hand, a passerby sneered, muttering something hateful under their breath. Ethan's grip tightened, but Zachary flinched, pulling away. The world wasn't kind to people like them, and he wasn't sure he was brave enough to face it. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and cruel. Zachary stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, his reflection a stranger. His parents beamed, his mother fussing over his cufflinks, his father clapping him on the shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, son," Richard said, his tone final. At the church, the pews filled with guests, the air thick with anticipation. Claire looked breathtaking, her white gown glowing in the sunlight, streaming through the stained glass windows. But Zachary's eyes found Ethan, seated in the front row, his face a mask of quiet pain. As the music swelled, Zachary's heart pounded. Each step down the aisle felt like a march to his execution. He stood beside Claire, the officiant's words a blur. When it came time for his vows, his voice faltered. The room seemed to close in, the weight of every expectation crushing him. "I can't," he whispered, barely audible. Claire's eyes widened, confusion flickering across her face. The guests murmured, a ripple of shock spreading. Zachary's father stood, his face thunderous. But Zachary didn't look at him. He looked at Ethan, whose eyes were wide, hopeful, terrified. "I'm sorry," Zachary said, louder now, turning to Claire. "You deserve someone who can love you fully." "I can't be that person." Gasps filled the church. Claire's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling, but she nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. Zachary turned and walked out, his father's shouts echoing behind him. Ethan caught up to him outside, grabbing his arm. "Zach, what are you doing?" he asked, voice trembling. "I don't know," Zachary admitted, his heart racing. "But I can't keep lying." The aftermath was brutal. Zachary's father cut him off, freezing his accounts and barring him from the family business. His mother called, sobbing, begging him to reconsider. But he couldn't go back. He moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn, scraping by on savings. His life stripped bare. Ethan was there, though, a constant presence. They spent evenings talking, laughing, stealing kisses in the safety of Ethan's studio. For the first time, Zachary felt free, but the world wasn't kind. Hateful comments followed them in public, and Zachary's former friends turned their backs. Even Claire, though kind, kept her distance, her own pain too raw. One night, as they lay together, Ethan traced circles on Zachary's chest. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Zachary thought of his old life, wealth, security, approval, and the hollowness it held. "No," he said, kissing Ethan's forehead. "You're worth it." But the world's judgment wasn't the only threat. Zachary's father, furious at the public humiliation, hired a private investigator to dig into Ethan's past, hoping to discredit him. When Zachary found out, he confronted his father at the family's penthouse. "You can't control me anymore," he said, his voice steady despite the fear. Richard's eyes were cold. "You'll regret this, Zachary. You're nothing without us." The words stung, but Zachary walked away, choosing Ethan, choosing himself. Yet the fear lingered. Could he build a life from nothing, with the world against them? Months passed, and Zachary found work as a freelance consultant, his skills still sharp despite his family's rejection. He and Ethan grew closer, their love a quiet rebellion against a world that tried to tear them apart. They faced challenges, prejudice, financial strain, the ache of lost family, but they faced them together. One evening, in a small park near their apartment, Ethan proposed. Not with a ring, but with a painting, a vibrant canvas of two figures under a canopy of stars, their hands entwined. "I don't have much," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I have you. Will you build a life with me?" Zachary's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," he whispered, pulling Ethan into a kiss as the city hummed around them. It wasn't a perfect happy ending. His family's rejection still stung, and the world wasn't always kind. But for the first time, Zachary was living for himself, and that was enough. Claire reached out, too, inviting them to coffee. She moved on, finding her own path, and her forgiveness lifted a weight from Zachary's heart. "You were brave," she told him. "I'm proud of you." As Zachary and Ethan walked home, hand in hand, the future stretched before them, uncertain, challenging, but theirs. They'd chosen love over fear, truth over lies, and in that choice, they'd found something unbreakable. The world could judge, but they had each other, and that was a victory worth celebrating.